Hey, and welcome back to another LTCC teaching and learning video. Today we're focusing here on professional development focus and specifically talking to new faculty who might have some questions about being a new faculty member at LTCC. If you're like me, whenever I took a new teaching position, whether that was here, teaching at a university in Northwest Indiana, university in Germany for a short stint, and a K-12 teaching job years ago prior to all of this, I've always felt a sense of excitement and also a sense of trepidation about what I need to do, how I need to learn everything that has to happen in order for me to start my job. If you're a brand new counselor, you're probably thinking about your student caseload. If you're a brand new teaching faculty member or working as a library faculty member, you're thinking about your facility, working with staff, of course, getting classes ready. There's a lot that can really impact you early on. And usually the timing of hiring on is never great, whether you're hired in the fall, winter, or spring. You often have little time. If you're a part-time faculty member working at another institution, teaching at multiple places, or working full-time, maybe in industry, you also have to balance all that. You have to balance stuff with kids and family and commitments, taking care of loved ones. Some of you, like myself, maybe have taken care of sick family members over the years. It presents some serious challenges just in terms of time management and trying to figure out how to work everything out in addition to your faculty teaching or other professional career. And I say that because not all of our faculty are teaching faculty. There are some like me who primarily work outside of the classroom. Counselors may teach some classes. Library faculty may also teach some classes. There's variation across the board. There's huge variation if you're full or part-time, certainly, in terms of expectations of work. There are salary differences with benefits, of course, and there may also be differences in terms of some compensation available for things like committees and governance that we'll talk about today in this video. So to get started, we'll talk about onboarding, and I should mention that over the next couple months here, I'm recording this in August of 2022, Instruction will sit down with me, Ray, our new VP of Instruction, and we'll talk about the onboarding process and exactly what that will look like. In the years that I was here with Michelle Risden, we had some meetings as far as talking about onboarding. I remember there's some meetings with the instruction office and HR. And for one reason or another, it might have been COVID, this stuff didn't come into fruition. I've certainly given some suggestions out there. I think one of the concerns is that we just want to make sure that we don't overwhelm you with so much stuff with onboarding if we're not compensating you for that. If we do compensate you for that, we have to bring in our faculty association. That's the group that handles all our workplace conditions and contract bargaining with the district, the faculty association. So there's more to be done here with onboarding, but let me just mention kind of the basics of it. So once you're hired by the college, you go through this whole process by which you've turned in everything to human resources. You've likely had an interview with different people on campus. It could be a dean, it could be a department chair, a combination of people. It could be a director, it could be another administrator. It just kind of depends on where you're hiring in as a faculty member. At that point, you're turning in all your paperwork to human resources. If your candidacy is successful, and likely it is if you're listening to this video, then you probably get a call from the department chair or the dean, and they tell you exactly what might be the future. They might say to you, we have a class available for you, or we need to hire a part-time counselor with a certain caseload in the fall or in the winter. And you get a better sense at that point of exactly what to expect and what your duties will be and anything like the working conditions. At that point, likely human resources is asking you to follow up on anything that's missing with your application. Typically, your application has a ton of paperwork. There's the paper application that you submit through our current system called Higher Touch. I know we're moving to another system in the future. You may have to do a TB test. You may have to sign an oath of loyalty to the state of California. You probably have to turn in all your payroll information so you can get paid. So there's a lot that happens at this point in sort of the black box that exists between human resources, payroll, and instruction. Indeed, a heck of a lot of stuff is happening, but likely you're unaware of it because it's happening behind the scenes, and maybe upwards of 5, even 10 people are actively working on your application. So it's just very important in the early stages to get in all the required paperwork with human resources. Really amazing staff just down the way from my office. And if you ever have any questions about any of this stuff, you can always ask them. Human Resources is a great contact for you to ask questions about housing, or ask questions about, well, how do I find a copy of the faculty contract to know if I'll get paid for certain things? And what are my requirements for office hours if I'm a full-time faculty member? That stuff will also get covered in other areas of your onboarding. We have a mentor process for all new full-time faculty, and that typically has a lot of that covered in that entire process. But if you're part-time faculty, I think sometimes you feel like you don't have really a safety net available. There isn't a life raft out there if you have questions. I want to emphasize in this video, there indeed is a safety net, many life rafts out there, so that you can get the help that you need. So I want to stress that today for sure. Now, once you get hired by the district and you go through official process where the dean or an administrator or someone will take your packet to a board of trustees meeting. And if you're ever curious about this, you can go to ltcc.edu, and this is kind of good to know. So click on the About tab and then click on Board of Trustees. If you ever want to see, well, what does our board do? Who is our board? This is where you figure all that stuff out. I really encourage all of you to take an active role in working with our board. I know in the past, through the association, I've helped organize some Board of Trustees candidate forums or fora, and it's just really good to see who our board is. They're very active and committed, and you can also click on the agendas and packets. So anytime the board has a meeting, because of the California open meeting law called the Brown Act, the board has to post at least 72 hours prior to the meeting, unless there are emergency situations, natural disaster like a fire or something like COVID. They post the agenda, and you can read this entire agenda. This is available to the entire public out there, and if you ever want to see what happens with new employees, you can always click on New Employee Introductions, and then you often will see something down here under a personnel matter. It'll always be marked with HR. You click on that, and this will tell you if anyone has resigned or if anyone was hired. And this is just great information to have, because it shows you, that the board does have a role. They always, of course, take the recommendations of the administrators or the department faculty in making the hires of all of you, but they're kind of the final say in this, and once they make that hire, then it kind of has that official stamp. So wanted to mention that was a big part of your kind of initial campus steps. The other thing is, once you go through this hiring process and it becomes official through the board, you're put into a system, this SIS system, that basically establishes your employee information, and then that information, that data, communicates with other systems on campus, whether that's our Canvas, which is our online learning management system. And if you need to get to Canvas or any of that, it's always found. You go to ltcc.edu. It used to be at the top, scroll to the bottom, and you can see Canvas there and Passport. So Passport is the current system that kind of establishes everything you need to know, ranging from your rosters over here, your grade book. So if you're getting started with the grade book as a teaching faculty, you'll click over here. We're moving eventually to the self-service system. You can find your emails down here, your ltcc.edu. Keep in mind, if you're a part-time faculty member, you'll often have the @mail.ltcc.edu in front. Whereas if you're full-time faculty, it's like, for me, it's lucas@ltcc.edu. I mention this because sometimes there are some quirks with signing up for certain things at the college, different electronic systems or apps, where you run into a problem and then you discover, if you use the @mail.lucas.edu, then that might actually solve your problem. So keep that in mind. You can also log in to Canvas from here. If you go back to that initial page, right next to Passport Login is Canvas. And Canvas is our LMS, or learning management system. So this is how you teach your class at LTCC, regardless of what you teach, regardless of the modality, whether it's our formerly ISP, now called LTCC Rising Scholars Program, DE, distance or online education, which is fully virtual and you never meet, a face-to-face class, which you meet in a classroom like B103 here, or something called a hybrid class that meets some online and some in person. Regardless of that, you will be provided with a Canvas shell. The extent to which you use that Canvas shell will differ based on your type of teaching role. And I say that because in our ISP/LTCC Rising Scholars Program, you typically only currently use this for the gradebook, although in the future, as we bring on a new El Centro juvenile institution down in Sacramento, I know that we're going to be doing some Canvas teaching there. So Canvas is part of our platform that we use to teach. It's our primary platform in addition to Zoom, which allows for virtual teleconferencing. So once all this data stuff is established on the back end, you will then be able to have access to everything, from your email to your grade books, and of course to Canvas. And I want to make this point that if you have been hired by the college and you have your email and you discover you can't log on to Canvas, immediately reach out to our Director of Online Distance Education, Michael Miguel. He can get you set up. If there's an issue there, he'll talk to the IT department and they'll establish that connection to your Canvas so that you're able to log on and see your classes. So if you can't get onto Canvas when you go to your account, there could be a glitch or just a delay in terms of processing some of that behind the scenes data integration. So appreciate your patience with that, but it does take sometimes a few days for that to happen. Now, let's talk a little bit about the faculty role that you might have. So I have some additional videos you can check out on just what I call the diverse faculty experiences. If you go to the main website that I have, and this is, by the way, called ltccteachingandlearning.com. It's the Teaching and Learning Onboarding and Training Experience. If you look at the main homepage, you'll get some information about our campus. I am going to reorganize this a little bit to make it shorter or in little chunks. If you click on the onboarding tab, as I mentioned earlier, you can watch some of these welcome videos, and then you could scroll down and hear from me a little bit, and then start to get started with the onboarding. This will be changing over time, so it's not entirely finished, but this is a great video to watch and a section of text to read, diverse faculty experiences. What I'm trying to emphasize here is there are various ways in which we all differ, and we have to keep in mind those differences even though we all work at the same place. So we teach in different disciplines. You know, if I teach in anthropology, which I do, and you teach in biology, I have a component of maybe some class conversations or certain content or materials that you don't in biology. But then you have a huge component of practical hands-on applied stuff with having a lab. So there's all that safety stuff that you have to learn that I wouldn't have to learn if I was teaching maybe in business or anthropology or sociology. So when I go through this stuff, generally, it's really hard to emphasize everything that you're going to have to do as a new faculty member here at the college because of the simple fact of all these differences. The status of our employment, so if you're full versus part-time, I talk quite a bit in here under different areas. I recommend on the teaching tab up here to look at the professional development area. That talks quite a bit about differences between full and part-time faculty, things like managing work at home, our meta majors, student services, a lot of good stuff there to look at. So I definitely recommend checking that information out. Indeed, there's a big difference between being a full and part-time faculty member, and I'll try to cover some of that here in this video today. The experience that we have. So if you're coming brand new to teaching, if you've never taught before, if you've taught maybe a lot of K-12, I worked with a really great new part-time faculty instructor who's coming on board yesterday. We Zoomed for about an hour, and I was excited that he had all this K-12 experience. He said, you have, a lot of advantage over other faculty because you've dealt directly maybe with classroom discipline, you've dealt with classroom management. My wife used to teach gifted and talented in K-12 for quite a few years, and even the fact that every day on the board she had to write lesson objectives is an entirely different approach to teaching, yet one that can really complement teaching at a college or university. We often don't think about that, but if you come straight out of graduate school without professional training like I did in terms of having teaching certification, I did have teaching experience coming out of graduate school, but if you don't have some of that K-12 experience, some of that you do have to pick up on your own, like classroom management and dealing with discipline in a classroom. So the different experiences we have in terms of our background, even working in a business, if you've worked in the service industry for years, those are skills that will be absolutely positive for you to apply teaching a class or being a counselor or a library faculty because of all the networking that you have to do with students, staff, and community members. So by no means should you knock your past experience, whatever that happens to be. I think it always can complement your career here as a faculty member at LTCC. Our personality and backgrounds, our personal details can impact how we relate to work, of course, the modality that we teach in, and different pedagogical styles. If you like lecturing more than you like group work or something, there are a lot of differences that can have an impact on our experiences. And so again, you can check this out, and this is the same video on that content area. So I think there's a lot of differences here that we necessarily can't cover just because it's going to matter in terms of what you do differently from other faculty. And that kind of information is often something you discover just going through the first few months of training here at the college. So I encourage you, when you hire on and once you start to get your feet wet, to really think about who you should reach out to besides someone like me or a faculty mentor, your dean or department chair. Now, speaking of department chairs, if you go to ltcc.edu, which I'm there, you can click on departments here. If you type department, this should come up. And it's okay. It's actually, I would recommend typing academic programs. So click on academic programs, and then what you can do is click on any of the programs that you want to learn about. Like if you're teaching in biology, this will have information about the major. Let's see if it has information about the faculty. It does have the faculty here. And the cool thing about this is, because it has the faculty, you can just click on that and then immediately email that person, right? So it's an easy way to make a connection with the campus. Also, if you're looking for, I believe under academics, you'll find there's things like the college catalog that can be super helpful. Incarcerated student program, again, that's being rebranded as LTCC Rising Scholars from what I know. If you want to learn about our meta majors, that's also on here. And then the About Us should have our campus leadership page. About our president, here are vice presidents, and then also in our new vice president of instruction, Dr. Ray Gamba, and then you have the deans, the two deans of instruction. So it's just really important to know who all these people are. If you have any questions, you may work closely with your dean, you may work more closely with your department chair, kind of depends on your department. So when you go back to the department chairs that we were just looking at, one of the things you'll note is that not all programs have a department chair. So if you click on commercial music, there may be a reference to Dr. Mark Williams. Let's see if I can find one. Criminal justice will likely not have a department chair in here, and it doesn't. So just keep that in mind. If you don't see a department chair, it's likely that you'll want to reach out to your dean, or if there's a director of that particular program, you can also reach out to that person. So just important to kind of make those connections with people very specific to your role. If it's counseling, you're going to certainly work with Michelle Batista very closely and other staff in student services at the One Stop. So kind of just depends on what you are doing here at campus, of course, quite obviously. So next thing we can talk about would be the initial steps here. And you may have some training involved in your position. So there might be some training we asked you to do if you're a faculty member working and teaching in Canvas. That will be with Michael Miguel. This stuff is not necessarily all listed on the website, so some of this is it's really important to reach out to me, reach out to your dean, department chair, and just ask, what do I do next, or how do I get my training done? You could also ask HR. HR can send you to the instruction office, and you might be able to talk to Kelsey or Sarah, who are super nice and friendly. Lori Thorne as well is more in the back at the instruction office. Elizabeth Gable is also there at the front working with Laura Mattoon, who's our Director of Grants and Governmental Relations. So there's a ton of great staff there, and if you ever have a question, you could just go in and ask, hey, how do I do this? Or how do I get my library card? How do I get access to that? I mean, again, there's a lot of overwhelming details you get initially when you first hire on, and hopefully this will help a little bit with kind of charting some pathways you could take. And then I have a good sense that down the road with a brand new CIO, Chief Instructional Officer with Ray, we'll be able to define this a little bit better and do some of that stuff that I talked about earlier that I thought we are going to do but likely didn't do because of COVID, which is really develop a clear set of pathways that you know where to go to next once you've been hired and you go through this process. So your initial steps might be being assigned a class or being assigned a counseling schedule or assigned certain shifts or duties in the library or other places on campus. Again, a lot of different possible faculty roles. Once that is figured out and once you start your training, if there is training involved, you can get set up kind of for that next step. Now, in terms of teaching a class, if you're teaching a class, there's a lot of conversation probably that'll happen with me as faculty chair of teaching and learning, and then a lot of conversation that'll probably happen with your department chair. So one of the things I recommend on the onboarding page here is to really check out this section called Getting Started. This is going to take you through all the new steps of creating a brand new class. Again, I always do a one-on-one conversation with brand new faculty, and you can always drop into my office B101A here at the college. I can set up a Zoom session with you. We can have a conversation, and a lot of opportunities for one-on-one. I really prefer that, where we can just have really informal conversation and questions will come up as we talk, kind of thing. So if you look at this outline here, starting from scratch, this takes you through the various steps of teaching a class. So first, figuring out what modality you're teaching in, the course content you might need if it's a brand new class. Can you use another person's materials? That's why it's important to connect with me or your department chair, because we don't want you to have to reinvent the wheel. There may actually be stuff out there that you can use. And then you get into the nitty-gritty of creating your syllabus. I have a ton of resources on here. In fact, one of the things I'm planning to do is create some really cool formatable templates that you can use to customize your syllabus with all our policies and great stuff that you might want to use, as opposed to having to cut and paste all that from the college catalog. Then you'll create your class, you'll add components, you'll get into Canvas if you're using Canvas, and then getting help where you need it from me, your department chair, other people on campus. We could take a deep breath. I know this is a lot of stuff, there's a lot to do, but it's just the reality of working at a college, being a new professional, and it's really great to have context and take advantage of context. I remember when I taught in Germany, I had 1 or 2 faculty contacts, but I didn't have an ability to contact someone who was a classified staff member and help me with certain things that came up. Like once I went to teach my class, which was a Saturday morning class, and another instructor had just taken over my classroom and said that she was teaching there, and it took about an hour for us to work this out, and finally I got some help, and we basically kicked her out of there, and she wasn't supposed to be in there. But the point is, that was a situation where I needed like a hotline or a number, someone to call. I didn't have someone, and it was stressful. It was just stressful, and it impacted the students. So we're always trying to, as much as we can, think ahead, because we don't want you to be unnecessarily stressed, and we want to be able to get you that information, the contacts, the resources, the networks that you need. Now, professional development, there's a lot that will happen over maybe your first year in terms of professional development. Likely a lot of this is voluntary. Some of it might be required. If you're a full-time faculty member, you go through a new mentoring process that involves you working closely with a faculty colleague who's tenured. You also have to visit various offices on campus and get checked off that you met with a person, you learned about that area. Again, some of this may change with a new chief instructional officer in instruction, so this is just kind of the old process that we're talking about. But it's really cool having that mentoring process, because you get to work informally with another full-time faculty member and ask questions about, what does the academic senate do? What should I be doing in terms of disruptive students in my classes? Having that ability to network one-on-one with faculty colleagues is really key. When I was first here, I remember there was a business faculty member who kind of took me under her wing, and I was brand new here, and it was Thanksgiving. I was just hired on, literally moved out here from Indiana in September back in '98, and she invited me to her Thanksgiving gathering with her family. It was really gracious of her, and I appreciated that, because I didn't know a ton of people after just a couple of months. So I think you'll find that a lot of people are super warm, and there's that welcoming spirit where people will say, I'm willing to help you. So even beyond if you're full-time faculty, your mentor, reach out to other faculty, classified staff, administrators, directors. Everybody is super friendly here at the college. If you're a part-time faculty member, we will have some trainings available. If it's a training that we offer to you, it's very often compensated, so you're paid for that training. I'll mention this later, but if you want to get involved in committees, part-time faculty are paid also to be on committees. So a lot of great opportunities for professional development here through teaching and learning. If you click on the workshops tab, you can get information about upcoming workshops, what I call my teaching talks every Tuesday. And you could always get that information here on the website, and I'll send an email out with the Zoom login information. And then this down here has an archive of all the previous workshops, and I encourage you to check these out just to see what we've talked about in some of our past meetings. So a lot of opportunities there for professional development. We also do something called the Excellence and the Advanced Excellence, the ETW and the AETW, both in-person, face-to-face, and online workshops. And these focus on teaching techniques. And I think typically in the past, those have been taught by Treva and Sarah, and likely in the future, those will be opened up for other faculty to facilitate and lead as well. And you will be compensated for that as a part-time faculty member. And the good news is, if you look at our faculty contract, you can then achieve what's called the associate status, in which then you will qualify for a higher rate of pay. So it actually behooves you to go through these PD or professional development workshops and activities, because it can actually increase your base pay quite substantially. Again, that's all found on the faculty contract, which is available both on our ltcc.edu website and also available on ltccteachingandlearning.com. Now, committees and governance, if you want to check out anything about committees, if you have questions about, say, professional development, I encourage you to click on teaching and then scroll down here to where it says professional development, kind of at the bottom after the different teaching modalities. And you'll find here the list of all the possible things you could take part in, including learning about our faculty contract. Mike did a really great video workshop for us in which he talked about the ins and outs of the contract. So that's a really great one to learn about and gain a better understanding of what the contract is and how it affects you as a faculty member. I did a video on committees. I really recommend this one. So if you want to learn about all the different committees on campus, what we call our shared governance system, and that just refers to the process by which we establish the various decision-making arms of the college. And if you're curious about that, I really need my whiteboard, but I'll just make do with this temporary whiteboard. So if you're ever curious about this, the Academic Senate, let's make sure that's on screen, is in charge of all academic and professional matters. So there are what we call the 10+1, or at our school 10+3 areas. Things like processes for grading, things like processes for faculty professional development, faculty role in budget planning. Those all funnel under the role of the Academic Senate. We have a local Academic Senate, and then we also have a statewide Academic Senate. I happen to have served on the statewide Academic Senate back in the early 2000s. So if you ever have any questions about that, how to get involved in the statewide Senate, go to what we call plenary sessions, both in the fall and the spring. Just reach out. I'd be happy to tell you about that. We also have an area. We're in Area A. There are 4 areas of the statewide Academic Senate. And then we have area meetings where we vote on resolutions that will be considered at the plenary session, typically at the spring, more towards the end of the year. So we have a local Academic Senate. It meets on Fridays, currently 11 to 1 in the boardroom. Sometimes those have been on Zoom as well. And then we have a faculty association. We are affiliated through the CTA/CCA or a community college association. If you ever want to check this out, go to cca.org, I believe, or it might be actually, sorry, it's obviously not cca.org. It is, I'm going to type in here, someone else has that. It's cca4us.org. So someone else owns CCA. And this is the statewide association that represents us. So if people need legal help, there's a lot of stuff that the association can do for you. If you have any questions, I've been both a negotiating member and association president for, I want to say, close to 15 to 20 years in those different roles. So the faculty association handles what include workplace and contractual matters. So different from the Senate, but close, in terms of some of the purview of representing all the faculty association will deal with pay. So if we're negotiating with the district, which in this year we did receive a raise for all the faculty, and actually all the groups across campus received a raise, we will work with the association will work with the district, and then we negotiate the terms of what's in our faculty contract. The faculty contract says everything about your requirements as a faculty member. It talks about your compensation. It talks about sick leave if you qualify for that, health and welfare benefits if you qualify for that. And again, there's a big difference between full and part-time faculty in terms of some of those benefits. So you just want to kind of be sure you understand that. But if you want to get involved in committees or governance, and in addition to the Senate, as you'll gather from my video on committees, it's actually not up here currently, this is the one with the contract, but I go through all the committees, everything from the curriculum committee that establishes processes for writing and revising curriculum, to our Institutional Effectiveness Council, to our CLEMC or College Learning Enrollment Management Council that deals with a lot of issues of learning, classroom, and enrollment. All those committees need representatives, whether full or part-time faculty. If you're part-time faculty and you want to get involved, reach out to our Senate. Anyone else on campus will be happy to help you, because you'll be compensated for service on those committees. And believe me, we need the part-time faculty voice. This is no secret, it's the truth. The majority of classes taught at LTCC, as is the case with many community colleges, are taught by part-time faculty. There's a whole political dimension to that. We could talk about, there are organizations that just represent the part-time faculty across the state, because there are certainly concerns about the exploitation of part-time and adjunct labor across the country. The UCs are dealing with this. They have a lecturer status there that often doesn't have tenure and often doesn't have all the perks and even representation of the full-time faculty there. So it's a real political concern, and I encourage all of you to get involved with our faculty association and to be present and to really have a voice, because we need to all support our part-time faculty here at the college. We also have student clubs and campus events. If you ever want to learn about this stuff, go to ltcc.edu and you can type in student club, one of those search terms, and you'll get all the information about various student clubs. Again, if you want to be advisor and ever work with one, you'll be paid for that. A lot of different great organizations to take advantage of. Lists many of them. I also have some videos on the website that you can check out that discusses student clubs, and you can learn more about them if you're curious. Now, if you do anything related to vocation or research, so I do quite a bit outside of my work here, teaching and publishing. You can see some of my research here. This is just scottlukas.com, SCOTTLUKAS.com. If you ever want to see about some of my writing and publications, you could check out this website. For those of you that do similar work, if you are a professional artist, if you're a filmmaker, I think of Solange, who teaches in our DMA program and who is a professional Grammy-winning sound artist, sound engineer. A lot of you work in another field, and maybe that's what pays more the bills than working at LTCC if like you're working here part-time. Or you might have a vocation outside of here. I remember interviewing some faculty recently who have a background like in rock climbing, and their day job, if you will, is taking out groups of people doing rock climbing or rafting or outdoor adventure trips, and their part-time job is teaching at the college. So there's a ton of variation, as I talked about earlier, just in terms of kind of our professional lives and time that we spend outside of our job, whatever that our primary job happens to be. And for many of you working here part-time, your primary job is likely not working at LTCC. So it becomes a concern to say, like, are you getting the connections you need, the networks that you need to stay connected to us? We encourage all of you to attend faculty days, to attend what we call our Coyote Kickoff or our senior days, and all that information about those events that help bring you into the fold of the campus. All of that stuff's available on the ltcc.edu website, so you can check all that out. So any vocation, research, artistic endeavors, you own a small business, that's often great stuff to bring into your classroom. I was just telling a new faculty member we hired recently, hey, you do all this cool stuff with snowboarding. Talk to your students about that, because it's going to help humanize you in your class. It's going to help say, this person doesn't just teach English, they also do this cool stuff with snowboarding, or they worked for years doing something else. And one of our new faculty members was telling me these stories, and I'm like, you have to write a memoir, because this is super interesting. And our students would totally vibe with that kind of, ability to talk about your life in a very expressive way. So share that with your students as much as you feel comfortable. We should also talk a little bit just about self-care. I'm a big proponent for self-care. I will feature from time to time a lot of information on our website, our teaching and learning website. In fact, If you look at some of our previous workshops, I have quite a bit that have focused on self-care, managing your at-home work, your childcare duties, your spousal partner duties with working, and managing another job and working on another job. So I will always say self-care is not just something to think about. I would say it's mandated, it's required, and we need to think collectively about supporting one another and practicing self-care, because believe me, if you have a situation that develops in your life, like I could relate to, unfortunately, where you have one or even two or three family members who in a very short period of time undergo extreme health emergencies that require you changing your lives, your life and the lives of others that you're caring for. It's never easy. And so practicing self-care is key, particularly when one of those emergency situations arises and you have to adapt very quickly to what's been thrown on your plate, often in a very random, unexpected, and highly stressful way. So if you don't practice self-care, you will burn out, you will not last. I just think absolutely it's one of the things we need to stress, and frankly we need to stress it more, because sometimes we don't know when someone's stressed out. We don't know if someone's going through a crisis other than maybe seeing the expressions on their face. And we all need to approach, I think, relationships with others with grace and assume that even though someone doesn't like stress, they might be undergoing or going through a very stressful circumstance or circumstances in their life. You just never know. So I will always emphasize self-care with you whenever we talk, whenever we have conversations. And that is really going to be it today. So again, please reach out to me, reach out to department chairs, deans, others on campus, other faculty, because we really all are here to help you. I know sometimes it's like a cliche where we say we're all willing to help, and I think we really are, as long as we're available. And again, things come up, emergencies come up, sometimes sabbaticals happen with faculty, they take leave, administrators take leave, etc. And you do see people come and go in terms of our hiring processes, but I think we've been pretty good, fairly good in terms of retaining people, and hopefully giving people a sense early on about what to expect about the LTCC culture. Any questions you want to talk with me about offline, like how does it differ teaching here than versus a university? I could talk to you about that, since I've taught at a community college, university, and also at a high school. So I'd be happy to have any of those conversations privately. If you ever come to me and share something, I will always keep the information you share with me confidential, so you could certainly talk to me and I'll respect confidentiality. And I just encourage you to reach out to all of us. We're here to help. Just want to welcome you as a new faculty member here at LTCC. Take all this in. I know it's been a lot of information, but it's hopefully here to help you. Really go back to the website. We also have a companion Canvas shell that you can take advantage of to learn more about the ropes of teaching, working as a faculty member here at LTCC, whether you're in counseling, library, non-instructional faculty like myself, or teaching faculty in the classroom. So thanks for listening today to this video. I'll be back with additional teaching and learning videos in the future.